July 8th is one of my favorite days ever because of, certain events that happened exactly a decade ago today. And if you've seen my Instagram or Twitter, you know what I'm talking about. But I was doing some research, some other things popped up, and I'm like, oh shit, this might be one of the most consequential days in sports history. So let's get right into it. Starting off in 1949, Hank Thompson and Don Newcomb of the Giants and Dodgers, I believe, became the first two African American baseball players to play against each other in a game, which is honestly really sick. It's sad that it took till 1949, but it's still really cool that it happened, and interesting that it happened today. Theoretically, if the seasons were the same, it happened in the middle of the season. So just adding new talent to the team, picking up new roster spots, so those guys got a chance, and that's really cool. Then in 1994, we had the preliminary trials for O.J. Simpson, and it was found that there was enough evidence to move to a trial, which ultimately led to a not guilty verdict because the glove didn't fit. And then, he wrote a lovely book called If I Did It, which, to anybody that is going to potentially ever commit a crime, first of all, don't commit the crime. Second of all, don't write a book talking about what would happen if you did commit the crime. I feel like that's very easy to, for people to connect the dots there. So that just might not be the best thing for you to do if you are in that position. And obviously that trial then led to him being sentenced to jail for other things. And, he passed away recently. So interesting life for OJ. Then in 2010, the greatest athlete of all time, in my opinion, made the dumbest decision of his career. LeBron James had a 60-minute special on ESPN called The Decision to announce where he was going to play. And this is, he got done playing in Cleveland. He was drafted there in 2004. It's 2010. He's been there 6 years. They really haven't put a contender around him. So he decides to leave. He decides to go to Miami, team up with Dwayne Wade, and they get Chris Bosh to come as well. And 13.1 million people watched him say the words, "I'm taking my talents to South Beach." But, it was probably the worst PR look for his career, given that he was leaving a team that was that he was drafted to. And at that point, which is only 14 years ago, it's kind of crazy, but people weren't used to this type of thing happening because Kobe stayed with the same team. And, most star players at Tim Duncan's of the world, they stayed on one team their entire career. And that was not the best look for LeBron. According to some statistics, his marketability went down, his appeal went down, people liked him a lot less. And he's already one of the most hated athletes of all time at that point. So that didn't do anything to help. And then the best thing that happened on July 8th ever, and if you're in a certain demographic. If you're a Brazil fan, you probably hate this day and are pissed that people keep bringing it up. But exactly a decade ago today, July 4th, 2014, Germany meets with Brazil to play the first semifinal for the 2014 World Cup in Brazil. I would like to reiterate that Brazil is playing for a chance to play the World Cup final in their home country and win it, potentially. And in the quarterfinal, Brazil lost Neymar, their best player, but it's still Brazil. It's still, one of the best countries in the world. They still have a fighting shot. And Germany made it to the semifinals in 2010 and lost to Spain, who ultimately ended up winning it. So they still have a really good team, and, they still have Thomas Mueller, Manuel Neuer. They're both in their prime. They also have older players like Bastian Schweinsteiger and Miroslav Klose. And, it's shaping up to be a really good game. And personal story, I was going to India the next day, so we're packing, we're running a bunch of errands. So my entire family decides to not watch the game and just record it and then watch it later, because this is before, Bleacher Report existed and before I was on Twitter and everything else. So, it was fairly plausible that it wouldn't get spoiled. But the game was so insane that I kept getting texts about it from people, all my cousins, all of my friends who knew that I was rooting for Germany or just in general. And me and my mom ended up knowing the score, but since no one else from our family did, we still celebrated every goal like we didn't know that it was happening, which made it even better because like then the tension is gone and you're just like waiting to see how it happened. But I'm gonna get to the climax of it all. The Germans scored 5 goals in 30 minutes in a World Cup semifinal 10 years ago today. And it was absolutely insane. Within the first 20 minutes, you had fans in the stands crying. If you watch the highlights on YouTube, you'll see like a little kid crying, an old man holding like a World Cup replica trophy crying. That breaks your heart, unless you're a Germany fan. It still makes me laugh. I apologize. But it was the biggest defeat in World Cup history for Brazil. It was a record for, I believe it was a record for like goals scored in the World Cup. And once again, it is in Brazil that they get utterly humiliated by Germany to the point that the PA announcer in the stadium had to tell Germany fans to stay in the building until they arranged for security for them because they couldn't guarantee their safety otherwise. And that night in Brazil, people were burning their jerseys, obviously, but they're burning buses, they're flipping over cars and buses, like there's riots in the street. Obviously, like the coach resigns. I believe the president of Brazil also, it was not a good look for her at the time either. But just an absolutely insane day, absolutely insane game. For my people that don't watch soccer, imagine an AFC championship game or NFC championship game or like NBA finals game where one team just beats the other by like 90. Like in basketball, I would say like 90. In football, like imagine if a team wins like 70-7. Like I wouldn't even put 43-8 Seattle beating Denver up there with this game because that's still like, it's 35 points, that's 5 touchdowns. Like you have to score 5 times. You have to score, you lose by 6 goals. And goals might be harder to get than touchdowns. That's a debate for another day. And then on top of that, Miroslav Klose, who was playing in his last World Cup, set the record for most World Cup goals in a career, beating a Brazil legend. And that was another cherry on top of the cake. So July 8th might be the coolest, most unique day in sports history. If you guys enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe. Peace.